My son canceled my 75th birthday party over a temper tantrum thrown by his mother-in-law. There was no apology, just the expectation that I would step in and babysit anyway. That was the exact moment I realized I didn't need to get louder. I just needed to leave. Mom, we're going to have to call off the party on Saturday. Chloe's mom is having a total meltdown over her new puppy, and we all need to be there to support her right now. That was the voicemail my son Austin left me, just 3 days before my 71st birthday. This wasn't just any party. It was a celebration I was hosting in my own home, paid for entirely out of my own savings. I didn't cry. I didn't call Austin back to beg or argue. I just stood there in my kitchen, looked at my phone, and quietly set it down on the oak countertop. The roast I had been marinating in red wine and herbs for the weekend was sitting in a bowl in front of me. Methodically, I picked up the knife, cut the meat into smaller portions, and put them in the freezer. That was the moment I realized my days of being a doormat were officially over. I'm Evelyn, 69, and I've been a widow for 5 years. For the past 2 years, Austin and his wife, Chloe, have been living in the renovated upper floor of my house in a quiet suburb of Atlanta. It was supposed to be a win-win arrangement for my later years. But Chloe didn't see me as a mother-in-law. She saw me as a live-in maid and a free babysitter for their little boy, Leo. My son just looked the other way. They figured that because I was older, I didn't need my dignity anymore. Chloe had even started quietly replacing my family photos and decor in the hallway with her own modern pieces without asking. When I walked into the kitchen later that evening, Chloe was sitting at the table tapping away on her iPad. She didn't even look up. "Oh, Evelyn, good you're here," she said carelessly. "Since we're going to be at my mom's on Saturday, you can just stay home and watch Leo. It actually works out perfectly." No apology for canceling my milestone birthday. No empathy whatsoever. Just another chore. I didn't feel rage, just a deep, cold clarity. I didn't argue. I just looked at her and said, "I already have other plans on Saturday." Chloe's head snapped up in surprise, but I had already turned my back. They thought they could control my time because I was usually quiet. They had no idea that my silence was the beginning of the end for them. The next morning, the house was blissfully still. Austin was at work, and Chloe had dropped Leo off at preschool. I sat down at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, opened a drawer, and pulled out my little blue notebook. My late husband and I had built this colonial-style house 30 years ago, brick by brick. It belongs to me entirely. The deed is in my name, and the mortgage has been paid off for a decade. Austin and Chloe only paid a tiny monthly fee for utilities which barely covered the skyrocketing costs of electricity and heating. The rest of the household expenses came out of my own comfortable pension. I walked slowly through the rooms to take a mental inventory. In the basement sat Austin's expensive mountain bike, because he claimed there was no room for it upstairs. In the garage stood Chloe's brand new SUV, while my little sedan was left parked outside in the cold rain. They had spread through my house like invasive ivy. That very morning, I started shifting the balance of power. My first stop was the bank. I immediately closed the joint account I had set up to fund the household groceries, an account I had been subsidizing heavily. From now on, there was only my private account. At dinner that night, Chloe set down a bowl of plain pasta. "We really need to pinch pennies, Evelyn. Inflation at the grocery store is getting out of hand," she said instructively, while placing a plate of premium seared salmon in front of herself and Austin. I was left with the dry carbs. I ate in silence. I didn't need salmon to make a point. After dinner, I went to my room, locked the door, and opened my binder of household contracts. Electricity, gas, internet, every single utility was under my name. I was the invisible foundation keeping their comfortable lifestyle afloat. And I was completely ready to pull the rug out from under them. Saturday arrived, my 71st birthday. By 7 a.m., the house was completely deserted. Austin, Chloe, and Leo had rushed off to Chloe's mother's place. There was no card on the counter, no flowers. Just a dirty coffee filter Chloe had neglected to throw in the trash before leaving. I looked at the mess, put on my best winter coat, grabbed my favorite handbag, and walked out the front door. Weeks ago, I had reserved a table for one at a high-end restaurant downtown that I had been dying to try. I thoroughly enjoyed every bite of my 3-course meal. The waiter was incredibly attentive, and the food was spectacular. I ordered a glass of Pinot Grigio and raised it in a silent toast to myself and the decade ahead. At 70, I was healthy, sharp, and financially independent. While I was enjoying my dessert, my phone buzzed in my purse. It was a text from Austin. "Where are you? We came back early. Chloe needs the garage clicker. Your car is blocking the driveway." I read it, hit delete, and slid the phone back into my purse. I didn't rush. When I finally pulled into the driveway late that afternoon, Chloe was standing there with her arms crossed, her face flushed with irritation. "Where have you been? We've been waiting out here for an hour. You could have at least let us know," she snapped. I stepped out of the car, locked it with a calm beep, and looked her dead in the eye. "It's my birthday, Chloe. From now on, I spend my time exactly how I see fit." Her jaw dropped. She was not used to the quiet, compliant Evelyn having a voice. But this was only the first step. On Monday, I set my plan into motion. I waited until Austin got home from the office looking drained. He immediately collapsed onto the living room sofa and started scrolling through his phone, while Chloe made a big show of loudly slamming dishes into the kitchen sink nearby. I walked into the room and stood right in front of the coffee table. "Austin, Chloe, please come into the living room. We need to go over some business," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it held an undeniable weight. Chloe marched in with a dish towel in her hand, a scowl plastering her face. "What is it now, Evelyn? I don't really have time for a lecture," she sighed. I refused to match her hostility. "Starting next month, things are changing around here." I began placing 2 printed documents on the table. These are the new terms for occupying the upper floor. Your utility contribution is being adjusted to reflect actual market rates, which means it will triple. Additionally, I will be reclaiming the garage for my own vehicle to protect it from the weather. You have 3 days to clear out your parking space. Chloe let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Is this a joke? We're family, we're supposed to be helping each other out." "We are," I replied coolly. "But helping each other means respecting both parties. These terms take effect on the 1st of the month. If you choose not to sign, you'll need to find other arrangements." Austin looked down at his shoes, completely red-faced and speechless. He knew the house belonged entirely to me, and that they didn't have a leg to stand on. Chloe tried to launch into a loud argument, but I simply turned around, walked into my bedroom, and turned the key in the lock. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like the true owner of my own home again. They thought I was trapped by guilt, but I had already opened the exit door. Over the next 2 weeks, I held my new boundaries with ironclad discipline. I only bought groceries for myself, and I only cooked for one. The rich aroma of fresh coffee and home-cooked meals drifted through the house, but the kitchen was no longer an open buffet for them. When Chloe tried to corner me at the bottom of the stairs to ask if I could watch Leo so she could grab drinks with a friend, I just gave her a polite smile. "No, I can't do that. That's my weekly book club night." She stood there totally dumbfounded. Her carefully orchestrated lifestyle, which relied completely on my unpaid availability, was fracturing by the day. Austin was visibly unraveling. He had to leave work early almost every afternoon, just to get Leo from preschool because Chloe refused to alter her social calendar. One night, I sat in my armchair and listened to them screaming at each other upstairs. Chloe's voice pierced right through the ceiling. Your mother is being so incredibly selfish. She's doing absolutely nothing for this family and ruining our lives. I just smiled in the dark of my bedroom. It wasn't selfishness. It was pure accountability. The next morning, I took the next major step in total serenity. I called my oldest friend, Brenda, who owned a beautiful upscale apartment complex right in the city center. A unit had just opened up. Evelyn, it's perfect for you. No stairs, tons of natural light, and it overlooks the park, Brenda told me. I toured the place that afternoon. Holding the key in my hand brought a wave of peace I hadn't felt since my husband passed away. I signed the lease on the spot. Austin and Chloe had absolutely no idea. They still thought our standoff was just about garage space and utility bills. They didn't realize I was stepping off the board entirely. Dear Quiet Revenge community, we wanted to take a moment to thank you for your kindness, encouragement, and loyalty. Many of you have been with us through hundreds of stories about family relationships, difficult choices, heartbreak, courage, and quiet justice. We believe in being transparent. AI tools may assist certain parts of our production process, but every story is carefully reviewed, edited, fact-checked, where appropriate, and prepared by our team before it reaches you. If you'd like to help us continue creating new stories, please consider supporting Quiet Revenge with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/quietrevenge. Family, co-fi, https://ko-fi.com/the story. Family, PayPal, https://www.paypal.com/PayPalme/Kanhuangmin. Thank you for helping us keep this community strong. I began systematically packing up my life. I purposely left the large furniture alone so I wouldn't raise any red flags or trigger a confrontation. Instead, I focused on my old photo albums, my mother's vintage jewelry, my favorite books, and my legal documents, sealing them away in heavy-duty moving boxes. Every day, while they were out of the house, I quietly loaded 2 or 3 boxes into the trunk of my car and drove them over to my new apartment downtown. It was a precise, almost clinical operation. To a casual observer, the house looked completely normal, but the first floor was being hollowed out day by day. One afternoon, Austin caught me off guard. He had an early release from work and walked into the kitchen just as I was wiping down an empty shelf where my fine china used to sit. "Hey, Mom, are you redecorating or something? It looks kind of bare in here," he asked, looking around with a confused frown. He looked exhausted, and his shirt was a wrinkled mess, a chore I used to silently take care of whenever he left his laundry baskets by my door. "Yes, Austin. I'm just making some room for a change," I replied shortly, offering no further explanation. He hesitated, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Look, Chloe is drowning, trying to manage Leo and the house upstairs. Could you maybe just cook dinner for us a couple of times a week? It would be a lifesaver." I cut off his pleading with a calm, unyielding look. "Austin, you're 38 years old. You started your own family a long time ago. It's time for the two of you to manage your own lives." He looked like a little boy whose favorite toy had been taken away. He had forgotten how to handle responsibility because I had spent a lifetime shielding him from it. Now he was going to have to learn the hard way. And the biggest lesson was still to come. The day I left for good was a bright, beautiful Thursday. I had hired a professional moving crew, and they pulled into the driveway at exactly 8 a.m. Austin and Chloe were at their respective jobs, and Leo was at preschool. The movers were incredibly fast and efficient. Within 3 hours, my bedroom set, my favorite antique armchairs, and all of my personal kitchen appliances were securely loaded onto the truck. I took one final walk through the first floor. It was completely empty, swept clean, and echoing with a profound silence. Every footstep rang out clearly against the hardwood floors. On the bare kitchen island, I left a large, plain white envelope. Inside, there was no emotional, angry goodbye letter. We were far past the point of words. It contained an official letter from my accountant, along with a formal lease agreement for the entire house should Austin and Chloe wish to rent the property fully at standard market value, of course. Next to the envelope, I placed my set of house keys. I was severing every single tie based on forced obligation. I locked the front door behind me, got into my car, and drove away without looking back. When I arrived at my new apartment downtown, the space smelled cleanly of fresh paint. The afternoon sun was pouring through the massive windows, lighting up the park across the street. I unpacked my coffee maker first, brewed a strong cup, and sat down out on the balcony. My phone sat quietly on the outdoor table. I knew it would start buzzing in a matter of hours. But this time, I was completely at peace, ready to just flip the switch to silent. The peace lasted until exactly 5:30 p.m. Then my phone began vibrating violently against the tabletop. Austin called 3 times in a row, followed by 2 frantic calls from Chloe. I let the phone ring out completely before finally picking up on his next attempt, holding it calmly to my ear. Austin's voice was pure panic, breathless, and on the verge of tears. "Mom, where the hell are you? The entire downstairs is completely empty. There's nothing left." "What is going on, Chloe? Just found an envelope on the counter." In the background, I could hear Chloe screaming hysterically, her voice echoing off the bare walls. "I moved out this morning, Austin," I said evenly. "I'm living in my own apartment downtown now." A heavy, stunned silence fell over the line. All I could hear was his ragged breathing. "But you can't just do that, Mom. Who's going to take care of the property? Who's helping us with Leo? Chloe has her final certification exams next week." He sounded like his entire world was collapsing. And for them, it probably was. Their free, all-inclusive ride at my expense had vanished into thin air. "You are both independent adults," I replied calmly. "The property is officially being managed by a real estate company starting next month. If you want to keep living upstairs, you'll need to sign the lease and send the rent to the management office. Otherwise, you'll need to find somewhere else to live." Chloe snatched the phone right out of Austin's hand, her voice distorted with rage. "This is incredibly messed up. You can't just abandon us like this. You're a horrible mother." I pressed the red end call button without saying another word. 2 weeks flew by in my new quiet haven. I didn't block their numbers, but I strictly replied via short texts and only regarding official business. Through Brenda, who still kept in touch with some of my old neighbors, I got updates on what was happening at my old house. The picture-perfect life Austin and Chloe had projected had completely fallen apart. Since no one was taking care of the lawn or putting out the trash on time, they were already racking up fines from the homeowners association and angry complaints from the neighbors. Chloe actually had to drop out of her certification program because they couldn't find anyone to watch Leo for free, and the cost of a private nanny swallowed their disposable income instantly. Austin was pulling mandatory overtime just to cover the actual market rent required by the property management company, now that my financial subsidy was gone. The neighbors reported that the 2 of them could be heard screaming at each other in the driveway almost daily. Without my silent coordination holding it all together, their vanity project of a lifestyle crumpled like wet cardboard. Then one afternoon, Austin showed up unannounced at my building downtown. He had clearly gotten my address from the management paperwork. He looked shockingly older, with deep dark bags under his eyes and rumpled clothes. He stood outside my door, holding a sad, slightly wilted bouquet of flowers. "Hey, Mom, can we please just talk for a minute?" he asked, his voice cracking. He looked at me, and for the first time in years, he was actually seeing his mother not just a utility to be used. I kept him outside my threshold. This apartment was my sanctuary, and I refused to let the old dysfunction cross into it. Instead, I suggested we walk down to the park and sit on a bench. He agreed, immediately placing the sad flowers on the wooden slats between us. "I am so incredibly sorry, Mom. For your birthday. For how ungrateful we've been." He started staring intently at his worn-out shoes. "Chloe and it's over. We split up 3 days ago. She's packing her things to move back in with her mother, and she's taking Leo. I can't afford the house or the rent on my own. I don't know what to do." He didn't cry. He was just completely broken. I didn't feel a single spark of triumph or satisfaction. It was simply the inevitable consequence of the selfishness they had practiced for years. "I'm sorry to hear that about Leo Austin," I said, my voice steady and firm. "But my decision is final. The house is being put on the market by the management company next month. The proceeds from the sale are going straight into my retirement fund, so I can enjoy my life. You'll need to find a small apartment that fits your budget." He looked up at me, completely stunned. He had clearly hoped I would play the savior one last time and clean up the wreckage. Those days were over. "I'm happy to meet up for coffee every now and then, Austin," I added gently. "As mother and son, but never again as your safety net." He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. He finally understood that my boundaries were absolute. After he said his goodbyes and walked away, I stayed on the park bench for a long time. The warm evening sun hit my face, and a light breeze rustled the trees. I had let go of the house, but I had reclaimed something priceless: my own life and my self-respect. At 70 years old, my true peace was just beginning. Dear Quiet Revenge community, we wanted to take a moment to thank you for your kindness, encouragement, and loyalty. Many of you have been with us through hundreds of stories about family relationships, difficult choices, heartbreak, courage, and quiet justice. We believe in being transparent. AI tools may assist certain parts of our production process, but every story is carefully reviewed, edited, fact-checked where appropriate, and prepared by our team before it reaches you. If you'd like to help us continue creating new stories, please consider supporting Quiet Revenge with the cost of a small cup of coffee. Patreon, https://www.patreon.com/Quiet Revenge Family Co-Fi https://kyo-fi.com/the story family PayPal https://www.paypal.com/PayPal me/Kan Huang Min. Thank you for helping us keep this community strong.